YouTube to baby.
Baby. YouTube to beta baby.
Beta baby.
.org.
Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And it's time for a discussion, an interview with the one and the only Mr. Jeff Rosenstock. He has just dropped a brand new album, No Dream. Love it, love it, love it. A lot of you guys love it too. And going to ask him as many questions as possible within the allotted amount of time that I have. So my first question, which I've thought a lot about, honestly, something that came to mind as I was listening to your new album and writing up a review for it. The first question I want to ask you is, how are you?
I'm okay. Thank you for asking.
I am genuinely curious. I want to know how you're doing.
I feel like there's every now and then when I put out a record where the lyrics are the way that they are, that I do get a handful of texts from friends that are just like, you okay? And I'm just like, yeah, I'm okay. I was just dealing with trying to figure out some shit, you know? I don't know. I like, not that it's as self-conscious as all that, but I just feel like generally when I'm writing lyrics, I'm trying to work some shit out in my head, and that's kind of where it comes from. But yeah, I'm doing okay. I was pretty fucking burnt out and freaking out and overwhelmed when I was writing a lot of these songs, though.
Yeah. Do you typically find the writing process, or at least with this specific record, to be a bit of an arduous task because it does cause you to sort of like dive into a lot of the ugly truths of the world, or sort of self-reflect on maybe a lot of things personally that you're not happy with?
I wouldn't say it's an arduous task at all. Like I think it's not even, I don't even really like treat it like a task. It's just something that I am doing. Like if I put out a record, or if I didn't put out a record, like regardless, I would still just be kind of writing songs in my head and thinking about these things and writing them down, because I've just found that to be like, I guess, the healthy way that I deal with it. Or to me, it just seems like a bit of a, something constructive that I could do with a lot of the negativity that I feel like is inside me, and a lot of the negativity that I feel from out of the world around us and everything. I mean, I'm not gonna, like, sometimes like if I'm working on a song and I'm like 60% there, and I know that like I have to finish the lyrics, I know that I'm gonna have a day where I'm like, all right, I gotta dive back into this shit that I was feeling like super hard when I started working on it, and like get back in that pretty bummed out headspace and just kind of make sense of everything. And that's something that I will put off every now and then if it's something that I don't want to think about. But like, no, in general, it's not arduous. It's like a necessary thing for me to fucking exist.
I did have a question to go off of this, but what you had just said reminded me of something that I've said multiple times, sort of in reviews and talking about other songs, that singing and performing songs and sort of communicating a message like that can be a lot like acting. You're trying to convey an emotion and sort of like get the audience to feel it. And as you were just saying, when you're trying to get back into that space to finish something or write a certain song from that perspective, it means also being in that emotional headspace too. Yeah,
but also I think sometimes, and I am hoping this worked to my advantage of whatever. I hope it turned into good song making on this record. But like when you do go back to it in that way, which I guess that probably did happen on a handful of songs in this record, you have a different perspective on it. So I just hope it kind of like helps communicate kind of the duality of the experience of existence. You know what I mean? And I know that's like a heavy way to say it, but like just the fact that there is an end to it, like there is an end to at least the sharp, acute feeling of it, and it can level off to a place where you have some perspective. I don't know that it always works like that, but I think that that's a place that I want to try and get with songs. But then there's also songs where just like it does not make sense to get there at all,
Mm-hmm. I mean, speaking of duality, I was curious to sort of get more of a general sense of yourself outside of that writing space and just ask you if, not just from an artistic perspective, but do you personally feel like you slant a little bit more of an optimist or a pessimist?
I weirdly I want to be optimistic. I think about things. It's just literally impossible if you're optimistic about like the state of affairs in America right now. You're just ignoring everything. So it's pretty. I like. There's a lot of things that are just impossible to be optimistic about, as far as I see it. But I do try to be optimistic. I try to be positive. I try to feel that way. You know, not make an effort, but it feels natural and good to me to try and just be kind to people and try and, I don't know, deal with my shit by making jokes or just trying to like keep things lighthearted or, I think I've always been a person that just like ever since I was, like a kid, just like felt more comfortable laughing while like something like it helped me deal with it while like bad shit is going down or whether I'm like feeling certain ways. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's just like I don't know what that's all about. But yeah.
Well, I think if you're somebody who's I think if you're somebody who's kind of sensitive as to how shit the world is or can be, it doesn't necessarily need to turn you into a jerk. I mean, it can turn you into a kinder person if you personally feel like any sort of negativity or hate or aggression would add to that sort of like general shittiness that you want to go away.
Yeah, and it's weird because or it's not weird, but there's also like it's important to, as far as I'm concerned, it's important to be vocal about that stuff when you do have a platform. It is important, like if you think that like people are not aware that certain things are shit, to let people know that things are shit in a certain way. So that's I don't know if that's just a balance of being like being a public person in a way that I did not intend to ever really happen, which is a weird thing to say for a person in a band. But like, I was just in a band for so long where like really not, like a small rad group of people were paying attention. But yeah, I think like being there's a balance there. My friend Chris Farron, I think, just does I kind of look up to him as far as like being able to like I don't know. I look up to my friends, man. Like the way my friends treat other people, I'm just like, you are all cool, and I want to do that too. And also that doesn't mean like, so that's how I am, but also like I'm, you know, constantly like fighting off stupid ass like, you know, feelings of depression and anxiety and social anxiety very specifically, that at this point I understand is like chemical shit happening within me. And I'm like, I know, like, I'm just like, I know, okay, I know this is just something I have to fucking deal with right now. So, I think there's both sides of it, but I try to be a positive person.
I mean, I think we've, very clearly established that the state of the world, which I mean, I personally think it should, and it does for me too. I mean, the state of the world impacts you in a personal way. But also, do you see it as an artist who's making the music that you are now, almost like a necessary evil as a source of inspiration in a way too?
No, not at all. I would rather make no more records again and have things be good than be inspired by like fucking, you know, white supremacists being empowered in our country. I would rather that not exist. I would rather there not be school shootings. I don't give a shit. When Trump got elected and people were like, oh, this is going to be great for punk. I'm like,
Oh
what's
my
your
God.
fucking problem? Why do you care if this is good for punk? This is bad for so many people.
But
So
if you want to rant more on that topic, please do, because I myself have ranted on that topic.
yeah, I mean, I think I don't need to. I'm sorry, I don't have more to rant on there.
Well, I mean, if you don't
I
have more, I'll say before you finish your point that I think that message says a lot about Because I mean, you and I, as students of punk, both know that like not every band was political, not every band was revolutionary, not every band was like super radical in terms of their politics. Especially groups like the Ramones and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
I think it does say a lot about how people perceive that attitude in punk music as just being like another vehicle for entertainment, as opposed to like, I don't know, a band such as Crass being like, no, we actually like mean all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like when we say like they owe you a fucking living, it's like we want you to start like thinking about like what that means and everything. Whereas most people are just like, yeah, it's like I'm angry at all this stuff and I just need somebody to mirror that anger back at me so I can just like kind of passively like have an outlet for it and then go back to like, I don't know, working the Uber social media page or something.
Sure. I mean, I think that people who are writing articles or saying stuff about who are saying like, all right, this is going to be really good for punk. Like, I that's just such a weird way to look at like what was happening to me. But like at the same time, I don't know. I don't want to shit on anybody who is just like, I'm feeling angst. I want angst reflected back at me, because I think about how I was when I was younger. And I think that the stuff that was angst reflected back at me, whether it was like, like propaganda or against all authority, or just bands that were like singing like very explicitly about political things, like those are things that kind of started planting the seeds within myself to question things. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it is just like you know what I mean? I mean, there's a difference if you're like an adult and you're going back to your job as like
that's the thing. It's like
marketing person. Like, yeah, there's a difference there.
It's one thing. Like, it's one thing when you're a teenager and you're essentially powerless and like you have no other outlet for these feelings and you're disgust with the state of things other than like a propaganda record or a Rage Against the Machine record or whatever. But once you've become an adult and you're writing for some major online media publication about like how fucking awesome punk's going to be once like the Trump administration's in, you've kind of like lost the sense that, oh wait, like I'm actually a part of a class of people that has like some impact on this, and doesn't need to just kind of like play a passive role and like look forward to the punk music that's about to come out.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's from people who like ignored plenty of good punk music for
that's like true too.
Entire millennium thus
that's
far.
True too. Because the thing is, even before Trump, there were reasons to be pissed off.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, if there was no political stripe or whatever, I would still be eternally angry and upset with myself for any number of things I'm saying or feeling on any given day.
Well, that sort of plays in my next question, because you were saying earlier that you would rather never put out another record again than for the world to continue being shit. But if the world were great, what would a Jeff Rosenstock record look like? If there was nothing essentially out there for you to like target your unhappiness at, what would a piece of music from you essentially become?
Well, I think that unfortunately that like a lot of the fuel or whatever for writing my songs is just like anger I have towards myself for whatever reason. And as I've gotten older and kind of realized like just like I deal with some shit, like I don't know. I've thought about like what it like. I don't think as much about that, because I think I think that that's an impossibility, that the world is ever going to be like, oh, and guess what? Everything's perfect now. And, equality is here. Everything rules. No one's a shithead anymore. But like, I do think about like, what if I could get past these mental roadblocks, because I would like to, just as a person existing in the world, and like how like what that would be like for writing songs. But I don't really know, because I'm just wired the way I'm wired, I think some of the like, or I don't know. Also, I'm saying that, but you could like if you listen. So I did a musical for Craig of the Creek recently, and it's not like me singing it or anything, but I wrote all those songs and I wrote all those words, and they have nothing to do with depression or political strife. So like, I guess it would sound like that. I don't know. Maybe there's no maybe there's no middle ground for me between like the worst things ever and kids music, cartoon, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I did want to ask you about that a little bit later, but I mean, you've brought it up, so let's get into it now. Like this series that you are composing music for, Craig of the Creek, how did you end up getting that gig?
One of the creators, Ben Levin, saw my band Bomb the Music Industry play a house show at my friend's house in Bushwick in 2007. And kind of just, and then I guess got into Bomb the Music Industry and stayed up with it, and then like became a fan and remained a fan. And in his life, he ended up being, him and Matt, the other creator of the show, ended up being story editors at Steven Universe, and then they got offered a chance to make a pilot. And I believe he emailed me not really knowing whether or not we didn't know each other, and I don't think he knew I was gonna be like, yeah, sure. But when he emailed me, I was just like, oh shit, this is like my dream. Yes, like rushing to the phone, just like, yeah, I want to do this.
Okay, so wait, time. Your dream? Yeah. Like what are we talking about? Are we talking about composing music for like in a soundtrack kind of context, or sort of working in some kind of animation context?
I think literally like when like a dream that I had long since thrown away was like, man, it would be so cool to just like write music for cartoons.
Wow.
So yeah, it's sick. And I've also thought about doing that for like, film context and that kind of stuff. And I had like experiences after Bomb the Music Industry, my last band had broken up, where like I guess I was trying to break into that world a little bit through my publishing company. And like I submitted some songs for this Chloe Moretz movie where they're like, we want a teenage punk band, but it also kind of sounds like the Arcade Fire. And also it's really sweet. And I was like, okay, I think I could do this. And I just like never heard back. Or like, making bumper music for like Yahoo ads that like friends like would be like, hey man, I know you like making music. You're trying to get into this. You want to make like this shit that sounds like explosions in the sky for a Dick's Sporting Good long form commercial? I'm like, fuck yeah, I do. But then I was just like, this is, I don't know. I kind of just gave up on that being a thing happening, especially as like solo career shit taken off. Like that was happening while I was like working on writing We Cool, while I was doing graphic design at a place called the Shade Store where my wife worked, and they needed a graphic designer. I was doing graphic design for other bands. I was producing other people's records. I was like doing 6 things. None of them really made that much money, but all of them together made rent and made it okay. And then, once like we started touring and like the Death Rosenstock band shit kicked off, it was like, okay, well, I'm just trying to do songs for movies and shit that's not going to happen. And then Ben hit me up about the cartoon. I was just like, oh my God, it just happened. I wasn't even trying.
Now, what was there anything about that stuff that Ben was aware of? Was there anything about your work that gave Ben the sense that, yeah, Jeff could do this? Or was it just really like a shot in the dark? I'm just going to throw this to you and just like see if like you're up for it.
I can't imagine Ben was aware of that stuff. But when he emailed me, I obviously told him like, hey, like I've scored a short documentary, and I've done like a little bit of commercial music before. So I'm not like completely like, you have to teach me everything about this. I mean, I talked like I was better than I was because I wanted the job, of course.
That's how you get every job. That's how every job has been gotten that's ever been gotten.
I like did this interview for this job, like this graphic design job a long time ago, where they were talking about masking out things using the pen tool. And I think just like those words in a row, I was like, I probably know how to do this, but I don't know how they're saying how to do it. It's like, whatever. So I went to this job interview, and I went in, and like only good job interview I've ever done in my life. Like, yeah, man, I know this shit. Yeah. They're like, okay, cool. We're just gonna give you a test real quick. So like, just go in this room, and then they just like sat me in front of a computer. I like had no idea what the fuck to do, and like they were listening to Deltron 3030 in there, and everybody in there was like, hey, what's up? Heard you're gonna work for us. Like, yeah. And I just walked out, didn't say goodbye. Like they left me. I just left. I was like, oh man, that sucks. So yeah, that can backfire. It didn't backfire in this situation though. Ben really liked a record called Scrambles that Bomb the Music Industry did. He's talked to me a few times about just like that he liked that it was a really personal story. And I think he likes that my music is personal. And the show is very, to me, it feels very personal. It feels like a lot of very personal stories. And it's a very, especially for a show that's aimed at a kid demographic, like I feel like it has a lot of like just overarching emotional themes that like sometimes I'm watching it and I feel some shit really heavy in it. And so, I mean, I can only guess that maybe he hired me because he thought that I was capable of communicating, emotions well. I say as like I tried to do revisions for an episode today and fucking fucked them all up, and I'm still just like way behind. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Shit.
Well, that's been a lot of running theme. I mean, that's definitely been a running theme with a lot of new sort of like animation series on Cartoon Network. I mean, to call back to Steven Universe and even Adventure Time too, like especially the later seasons, like super serious personal shit in a lot of episodes and dad issues and greater society issues. I mean, it's pretty heavy. There's definitely a point in the show where you'd be like, okay, it's like you could see where an adult would relate to certain parts, but then there's a point. And it got to a point where it's like, this isn't for kids anymore. This is just not for children right now. This is just for sad adults. To move it back to music scene stuff, as essentially at this point a veteran of the DIY scene, as much a vet as anybody at this point, I think. There may be some like old scuzzy 90s guys, 80s guys that we could get in here, but we don't want to talk to any of them. We want to talk to you.
Okay.
As somebody who's sort of been involved in the scene during this crossover point where the internet has had so much sway, I know that you've personally expressed thoughts on, DIY is not dead, it's not gone, it's just kind of changed. But overall, sort of in the current paradigm, do you feel like musicians have become as empowered as they've also become sort of drowned out in a way, with just sort of like the mayhem that it's all created and sort of this sort of immense competition where everybody sort of like almost like crabs in a bucket, sort of like struggling over each other to get this song heard and that song heard and get in this playlist and that playlist?
I mean, I haven't really ever thought of it in that context, but I could see it. I just think, I mean, I don't really know how it is for anybody but me, and I don't feel like, especially in the last like in the last 3 years or so, ever like since Worry came out, basically, like we've been very lucky to not really have to kind of do that kind of like fighting for attention shit. But even as I say that, like, I don't know, because I never did that, like, and my friends never did that. We all like, we all had a vibe of like, well, if like let's bring, or I guess, I don't know, I feel like my vibe is like, let's bring each other up. Like if somebody's doing particularly good, like shout out your friends' bands, or like, take your friends' bands on tour and stuff like that. I think that to me is what like the DIY community is. Like the DIY community that I feel like I was a part of was not really like about trying to get yourself on playlists or trying to get yourself covered. I think that's like a different part of being an underground musician in like or independent musician in 2020 that I am thankful I do not have to participate in right now, because I don't feel like I would do a particularly good job at that. I kind of cringe every time I'm trying to write something. It's like, hey, my record came out, listen to it, okay, bye. Did I answer your question at all?
Yes, you did. You
Okay.
answered it. You answered it great. Thank you. If this were a job interview, you'd be hired.
I'm just looking over here at this Vibra slap that's just sitting here and just like, Wait, just like it's screaming at me. I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're an impulsive person a little bit, and you just got it out of your system. That's important.
Yeah. He never stops making music.
You're always generating sounds.
Yes. Aren't we
So,
all?
so to ask you sort of another question that deals in the way the internet has kind of impacted the way that musicians sort of operate and carry themselves and promote themselves, specifically in response to the song Fame off of your new record. And, you can tell me if I've sort of interpreted this the wrong way or I'm kind of, taking a wrong angle with it. But it would seem to me that after listening to this song, I want to ask you, do you feel like the internet in a way has kind of like put musicians in a position where they're like at the mercy of the mob or any whim or dislike that their fan base might have or any other sort of like factors that are outside of their control that they don't like, have any sort of say over in terms of like impact on their career or something like that?
Well, I mean, factors beyond your control. I mean, if you're talking about like, I don't know, like a fan's reaction to something that you did, like that is in your control because that's something that you did,
Sure.
you know? So I don't feel like that, but that song, a lot of it for me, was kind of about trying to come to terms with people feeling like they know things about me because I do write personal songs when they don't really know me and they don't necessarily care about me. And that's not and honestly, this is stuff that like I felt like I needed to get off my chest. And I don't really feel like I feel exactly the same way anymore. But it was just it's like I don't know. I think if you kind of are a low self-esteemy person like I am, like you kind of expect that everybody's thinking the worst of you all the time. And I think that being in front of people and being in a situation where people, I don't know, care what you say could it just kind of like stress me out. And then also, but also that song is a little, and it's, how do I put this? Like, I don't think I don't think that part of it though, that you mentioned, it really has anything necessarily anything to do necessarily with being a musician, but just like that we all are kind of public people now. I think just I don't know. Because I don't want I think it's important. I think that like there is a way that when people don't agree with what you're saying, that they will bully you in a way that makes you feel like shit, that makes every situation that you're in feel kind of like you are you are me in gym class in high school, basically. And I think that I think that that's kind of what other parts of that song are. So a lot of it is just like, me trying to come to terms with just like, I don't know, feeling like just trying to process how to be a person that I would like to be if I'm a person that is a public person in a way. And then just the way that we are all public people. And then just also in a way that like, how could I why I was having a hard time even figuring out how to parse my own feelings after just kind of feeling like I was tumbling around in a washing machine and not really knowing, not knowing what state I'm in literally, but just feeling like, but very much literally like not knowing what day of the week it is, or like not knowing like what month it is, or like what it was supposed to be doing, because it's just like kind of nonstop stuff going on. So I guess that's all those things. All songs are about lots of things.
Well, and I'll say that personally, as somebody who's spoken to a lot of different content creators of different stripes, be it video stuff, illustration stuff, music stuff. I mean, if you do have an audience and there's any sort of regularity with which people are consuming what you do, and there's sort of a personal angle to it that your audience relates to on any level, there does become sort of this strange familiarity that people can feel with you. And as a result of that, some people overstep boundaries. It is sort of a phenomenon that a lot of people feel. And, I think it's sort of important to kind of to continue having a healthy relationship with what it is you do. And I think in a way you sort of did it with this song, kind of reestablish that, like, hey, it's not like that. You know what I mean?
It is a song that's kind of like, it's not about, like, I love you, but it's not about you. You know what I mean?
And then there are some people who honestly, and I think this is sort of where this issue comes from. There are some people who, because of their egoism, they feed into that and they sort of see this mass dropping of people's guards around them because I love you, you make this, you make that, you do this, as an opportunity to take like advantage of other people, and that's why I sort of think you see a lot of this predatory stuff coming from, sort of, that Burger Records stuff just sort of like all went down like crazy. And the way that has played out has kind of been insane. I mean, just from somebody who's been operating in the rock scene and the underground scene for a long time, like, do you feel like this is sort of like a sign of a larger change or just sort of like a small drop in the bucket of sort of just a very long distance that we still have to travel?
It's hard to say, but I sure hope it's a larger change, I think that attitude fucking sucks. It's disrespectful to people who like music. Like, music is such a, I don't know. It's such a, like, not to sound however I'm going to sound, but it's like such a cosmic thing that's just like so important and can feel healing in ways that just other things don't. And to take advantage of that is the wrong thing to do. And I think for a while, you like, oh, we're both in our 30s. We've seen a shift in the scene where like people are finally like actually acknowledging that that's a bad way to do. But like, I've definitely like met people in bands who acted like fucking rock stars and like took advantage of that situation. And I'm thankful that the tides are turning.
I'm going to get into fan questions that people have been submitting in 1 second. Seems like we have quite a few good ones here. Again, if you guys want to ask Jeff a question, feel free to throw it in the chat, direct it at Swar, and I will be going through these questions in a second and sort of get the good ones to Jeff, and we'll try to throw as many at him as possible. To warm up for this, or before we sort of transition into that, I want to ask you one super important question. This is a job interview level question as well. And I figure you are the guy. You're the fucking man to ask this question. So I figure you will have the most poignant and lucid answer to this question. Okay, something I've been wondering for years. Many people in my chat as well. So get the fuck ready. Should there be a ska comeback? Should ska come back? Where the fuck is ska? Does it need to come back?
I am like, where the fuck is ska? Of course it needs to come back. Why did it go away? Who cares? It's music. Play all the music. Like, I don't think it matters. Obviously, I've got a dog in this fight because I like ska.
You do.
Nothing in my life. I'm just gonna say right away, what I'm saying right now is not true. Nothing in my life has ever been as confusing to me as why ska? Who fucking cares? Like, why everybody have to gang up on ska? It was like the music that if you were in high school band, you could like fucking play ska songs on your horn and you could like, meet friends and play music. It's cool. It's a music that, has like forever been promoting racial unity. That's fucking awesome. The bass lines are sick. The drum parts are sick. The guitar shit is cool. It's rhythmic. It's a little melodic. It's a little percussive. And it's a space where people can feel comfortable to open up and like, you could talk about super political stuff, or you could be totally fucking goofy and talk about like how like your French fries have been sitting in your car for a week and now your car smells. Like, the gamut is wide open. Yeah, I don't know. I got no problem with ska. I don't think it should have ever gone away. I think like a ska revival though is gonna make it like I just hope it doesn't make it exactly what happened in the 90s when like all of a sudden at like the drop of a little indie rock hat, everybody was like, oh, no, ska's bad. I don't like it. I never liked it.
You know, it's that answer was amazing. Thank you. That was exactly the answer that I wanted to hear.
Got the job.
And it made me think of so many things, like so many things I hadn't been thinking about. The lonely horn players that now just have nowhere to be, like outside of band class. Like, where do they go after band class? Nowhere. They don't,
Nowhere.
They go to a jazz club. Like, the guys who have been playing for 30 years are like, get the fuck out of here.
Jazz is hard.
And and skanking is something everybody can do. Literally
it's like the only dance I was ever able to do. I feel like
it's the only dance everyone can do. So it is a very community thing. It's a very everybody
kind of
thing.
hardcore dance too. Anyone can pick up change or swing their arms around.
That's right.
I have definitely I can't think of any hardcore pit I've ever been in where I wasn't just like going, like just whatever,
But yes, thank you. Thank you for laying down the law on that. That was important. That was important that people hear that.
Thank you for asking me about that. I'm happy to fly the flag for Scott.
Okay. All right. So Reductor Sonico wants to know, what's your favorite Tony Hawk soundtrack? Tony Hawk.
Favorite Tony Hawk soundtrack?
Yeah. What's the best Tony Hawk soundtrack out of all the Tony Hawk games? Which one has the best soundtrack?
Shit, it's so hard because I have not played them. I haven't sunk my life into a complete Tony Hawk game the way that I did in a long time.
We know it's been a while.
Well, yeah. But I mean, those. God, I would have to look at track lists. I feel like it's 2. I feel like two is the soundtrack. Yeah, I think it's 2. 2 is the one with May 16th on it, right? Lagwagon.
It might be.
Ask, what's that person's name? Sonic.
I forget. I
think it's 2. I think 2. But 3 is my favorite game because I like the revert, and I'm curious if they'll throw the revert in on these reissues. I didn't know you could get on the soundtrack for these reissues. I saw the soundtrack get announced yesterday. I was like, oh shit! I didn't even try to do that.
Okay.
Story, right? I've got plenty of them.
It would have been great energy to have you sort of like on a Tony Hawk soundtrack. It would have been a rite of passage for sure.
I would have been stoked. I'm in another band that got a song on it on a very bad re-release. I think of Tony Hawk 1 that they're just ignoring that they did as they're making these other re-releases. They're like, for the first time. I'm like, it's not really the first time though. Markatron
wants to know, why do you surprise release your albums?
I don't know. It's because it's what I felt like doing. It's not like I've answered this question a lot of times, and it's one of these questions that I answer that every time I answer, I was like, well, I don't know if that's how I feel. So I could say with Post, the thinking behind it was just straight up, we were on tour nonstop. I wrote a record that seemed very timely to me. I wanted it to be very raw. I didn't want to put a record out about that stuff 2 years later or something. And it was bubbling up. And so I was just like, okay, I just want to go in the studio and put it out right away because of that. And then also because I knew that Craig of the Creek was going to be starting right after that. So I was like, okay, so we'll surprise release this record. No one's going to give a shit that it came out. And then we'll do we'll play 20, 25 shows in America. And then I will return to my home and regroup and figure out how to be a composer, because that is something I told these nice people that I know how to do. And I kind of figured it was just going to be a sleeper kind of thing. And then it wasn't. I was like, oh shit, okay. So that was one that I was just I did not have high expectations for it. And then once we figured out we could do that, it was like, oh, so I guess I could just do that. So with No Dream, we were always planning on surprise releasing it. We had a bunch of very, I can't talk about it because I want it to happen someday, but there was some big shit that we were going to do around the surprise release of it. And I was like, oh man, this is just going to be fun. If I was a fan of a band and I saw this happening, I'd be like, this is sick. And then COVID happened, everything fell through, and I just asked Polyvinyl, like, hey, what's the soonest we could put this out? I don't want to fucking, we're not going on tour for this record. So let's get this record out. Everybody's bummed out. Let's put out a record. I saw like bands being like, we're delaying our records for a while now. And I was just thinking, like, I think that's lame. As a music fan, I want to listen to music. I need music right now. Thinking about like, the few records that were on my turntable that I was just listening to nonstop, and just like, I want to put something into the world, So that's why both those are like that. It's not like I could say that putting all my music for free on the internet, that is like a ethical choice. That is something that I like can make a fucking good argument about. As far as like surprise releasing records, it's always just kind of like, I don't know. I like being a spontaneous person. I think it's fun, but like, it was just those moments that felt like that,
For me personally, to ask you off of that, are you feeling in the mood, like many other musicians are right now, to like do a multi-release within a year-long period because like there isn't any opportunity to tour or anything? Like, will you work on something quickly and like throw something else out, or sort of quickly put together some other project that you might release, sooner rather than later?
Oh, I kind of just surf the wave, man. Like I don't like sit down and go, I'm going to write a record. Like I'm always writing and I'm always demoing. So it's just a matter of when things take shape. But like, I will say that the idea of like putting out another record before we're able to tour again, I would like, not that that's a plan or anything, but like I welcome that idea because I think it disrupts the idea of like fucking traditional album cycles, which just make being in a band feel like having some weird job, and being in a band should be fun. And I like it when things are spontaneous. I don't love the idea of the album cycle. I don't love that it's like, okay, you put out a record and then for a year and a half, you're doing this thing. And then after that, you better have a record ready because you got to do it again. Like, we didn't really do that kind of stuff in Bond. We toured when it was time to tour. We toured like when like it felt good, when we could get off work, and we put out records when our records were done. And I know that that's not the best way to position yourself in like the music biz. But like I would prefer that, because then it would just mean I won't have to feel like I have to wait to put a record out for when I have like 6 weeks off from the show or something,
Space Donkey wants to know if you have a favorite song from the new album.
I don't know. That's a weird. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It is an odd question, but there are some musicians who have like, oh yeah, I have my own favorite song, or my own favorite song from like my new record, or a song I'm most proud of, or one that I reflect on the most.
Yeah, I Leave It in the Sun is fun for me. I like that one. I don't think that's the one anybody else really likes. I feel like I see like I don't know. I read the reviews and shit, and I'm always just like, yep, that one. They didn't care about that one again, or whatever. But yeah, I think maybe also the song is just special for me because that's the last song that was written for that record. It was kind of like a last minute thing while I was after band practice with the Mikey Erg band. I don't know if you're a Mikey Erg fan.
I'm aware of the Ergs. I listened to a little bit of Ergs in the 2000s. I had some friends at the college station that were bigger fans than me, but I'm aware.
Cool. Yeah. I love Mikey. I love his songs. I made a record with him. I play in his band sometimes, and we were like drinking after band practice, and I just finished basically writing No Dream, and I was like, fuck, the sides are lopsided. Like, side A is so short, and side B has like 2 songs that are like 6 minutes long at the end of it. And Mike was like, write another song then. I was like, fuck. Okay. All right. I was like, kind of like challenge accepted a little bit. And then it ended up just kind of feeling, I don't know, this is the last song that I had written before, or like that I made a complete version of before leaving Brooklyn, which is, leaving an apartment I lived in for 8 years, leaving a city I lived in for almost 20 years. And it just like, it kind of just conjures up a lot of intangible feelings for me. So I can understand why no one else likes it, but I like that song.
You let me know if this person knows something that I don't. They're asking you about a band specifically that I don't hear a lot of people talk about these days. But first, Steel Tip wanted to
What's up, Steel Tip?
Steel Tip wanted to thank you first for using your platform to stand up for and support others, and they wanted to ask you what was your favorite Blood Brothers album.
Oh, Crimes for sure.
Crimes rules, man.
Crimes is, man. Me and Laura and Christine, like I don't when like Blood Brothers are cool, and I was aware of them and I liked what I had heard. Like I had some bandmates who would play in the band, but Crimes is just the way Johnny Whitney sings on that record specifically is both of them. Like it's just such a fucking unhinged record, but it's not an unhinged record in a way that a hardcore record is unhinged. Like you expect that shit to be unhinged, but this is like piano stuff. And I saw them off that record and it was a life-changing performance. I was just like, oh, you can go this hard. Okay. All right. Now I've like, all right.
What tour was that? Was that the Against Me tour?
No, it was the Big Business tour.
Okay.
They played at Spirit in New York.
Yeah, I caught them with Against Me just as like Axl Rose was sort of like having like another big wave. And but yeah, it's like so fucking hard. But simultaneously, there's such a method to the madness because all the fucking choruses like go hard as fuck. Like, who do you love? Who do you trust? Like it's so it's such a catchy record. It's so catchy.
I think they were saying that like around the time, and I think this is like from like my beer and weed ruined memory, but like I think they were trying to make a record that was just easier to play live so that they just fucking go off. And I wonder if they were like, I think it was like the Blood Brothers trying to make a pop record, and it ended up being so weird and cool. And like, that's the shit I'm fucking into. Like, I think about and it's the stuff I'm inspired by. Like whenever I am like writing poppier stuff or I'm trying to like write like the perfect pop song, I'm also in my head like, well, how can I fuck this up and how can I make it weird and how can I like pull it the other way at the same time? I think they were a band that did that in a great way. I think they're a band that like challenged the concept of masculinity in hardcore at a time when nobody was fucking doing that.
Yeah, because it's like the queer energy was just like there, like in everything that they did.
They're a great band. I love the Blood Brothers. And
but not just,
and they didn't go as hard, but the singer kept going like Johnny kept going, and it was like the funniest. I was just like, what the fuck are you doing, weirdo? I love it.
But not just speaking of missing them and to sort of almost go back to the ska thing earlier, other trends that were sort of missing. To sort of go to that earlier Blood Brothers stuff, there was a time in sort of like hardcore and the underground and even the indie scene to an extent. There wasn't really like a super cohesive or clear like name or label for it, but like so many bands like that, or Early Daughters, or like The Locust, or an Albatross were like super fucking spazzy and just like not even like hard like a metal band, but just like as frantic and as just like as just dizzying and as insane and freakish as possible. And it's like what the hell was that? Because it was there for a moment and like everybody was copying it, and then all of a sudden it just evaporated into nothing and it was just gone. And it wasn't quite grindcore and it wasn't quite metal and it wasn't just like a noise band. It was sort of like everything at once, and it was such a unique sort of like blip.
It was cool. It's like mathy. It was, I don't know, do people just call it post-hardcore? But like post-hardcore is such like an all-encapsulated like term of like, I don't know what to call this. So
it is like an all-encapsulated. It's because it's not Fugazi, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
it's cool that those bands fucking just like took like math and grindcore and power violence and like spazzy shit and like breakdowns and metal and just like and just put it and noise and just put it into like a weird ass thing. That was cool stuff.
Yeah,
not easy on the ears though.
Yeah, not easy on the ears. And when I go back and I look at like, when I look at like fan review sites like Rate Your Music, for example, and I see people who are like younger now reacting to those older records like at this time. They're just like, "What is this shit? This is bad." And it's just like, you weren't there, okay? If you were there, you would have liked it, all right?
Like, what do you? Yeah. I don't think people would say that about Blood Brothers, though. I think you could list those records. They hold up.
Yeah, you could. I do think they definitely hold up. I mean, especially Crimes, which there's like, not a gimmick to in any respect. It is like, a supremely catchy record. Man, I just want to thank you for coming through and doing a great interview and just being a great conversationalist and being an open book and being a friendly guy who everybody in the chat is just really smitten with. Everybody has just been loving the shit out of you, man.
Thanks. Thanks for loving the shit out of my body. I appreciate it. No, thanks a lot for talking to me. Yeah, it's nice of you to have me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, no problem. You're making great music that I'm curious about, and all of us are curious about, so it just made sense.
Thanks. I'm still staring.
Yes!
This now is in front of me. It's even worse.
All right, well, have a good one.
Cool.
And
thanks, you too.
We'll be looking forward to the next surprise release.
Yeah,
that you dropped.
And it's just fucking tomorrow. I'm just lying.
You lied.
That's the thing about surprise releases. I get to lie to my friends.
You lied your fucking ass off, and it's coming out tomorrow. Well, we're looking forward to the tomorrow surprise release, man. We're looking forward to it.
Thanks. Yeah, get ready. Keep your eyes on your phone. Please keep looking at your phone. Okay. Bye. I'm sorry.
Do
I hang up or do you end the thing?
Oh, honestly, like,
are we saying goodbye for real now?
On the YouTube clip, as far as the YouTube recording, the interview's already over.
Oh.